and this sash goes up, that means I still have glass on top of glass, right? Which means I still only have 50% ventilation. I just get some ventilation at the top and some at the bottom, which is really, really good because heat rises, right? And cool air drops down, right? So cool air is heavier. So when the cool air comes in through the lower sash, it pushes the warm air up to the ceiling. When it does that, it's kind of lifting it up and then it's pushing it out the top. That make sense? Okay. So from an energy standpoint, it's better to have double hung, but they're also more expensive. Okay. Again, traditional and all that stuff. They're hard to clean as well, but they do also have the tilt function. So now you've got sliding windows. Oh, by the way, double hung and single hung windows are very hard to meet ADA. Okay. You have to have an assist on it, and the assist is usually a crank, which means there's an extra mechanism to the outside of the window that cranks and lifts the window up for the people until that stupid spring breaks, and then you're back to square one. Okay? Whereas sliders allow for accessibility because somebody with a closed fist, as long as it's not locked, can slide that window open, okay, or close it. That's the key component with accessibility, closed fist. Again, sliders are only 50% ventilation because only one sash is sliding. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? Even though they're vertical now, they're still sashes. All right? Sliders are very contemporary. Okay? So a lot of the combs in the 80s, you know, with all of my employee desks, all right, that they wanted to keep, they had those. Okay? Casement windows, on the other hand, are ones that function like a door. They actually work outward, okay? So they crank out, so it's a positive mechanism. So they very rarely wear out, but they swing outward, okay? But they give you 100% ventilation, okay? Very modern, very, you know, people loved it back in the 90s and stuff. The disadvantage to them is they swing out. So when your kids are running around, sometimes they forget that when they come around the corner of the house that the windows are open, and then boom, right into it. Okay? And if you get out of it with just a knot on their head, great. Usually the window tends to not like to flex that much, and you can figure out what happens next. Okay? So you want to be careful with that kind of stuff. A lot of times you'll take your casement windows and your double hung windows or single hung, whatever, and you'll run them in what we call an assembly. Okay? So you're putting windows together so that they create a particular look. You've probably seen a lot of houses that have this look to them. All right? You seen that? Big picture window in the front of somebody's house or what have you. All right? That's an assembly. Okay? Now, sometimes the manufacturers will put them together for you. Okay? You see that a lot of times with this look. Okay? A lot of times they have sets of windows that are paired together to give you that look. Okay? You have awning or hopper or jello-size typed windows. These are 3 different types. So let's go out on the internet and see what some of these are looking like, because I could quite honestly explain them, but you guys would be like, huh? So picture is worth 1,000 words, especially with a camera, right? I thought we were over this at the end of the month, right? What did we say was the first one there? Awning? Window. Okay, so I can't spell, but. So these are awning windows. Unlike our casement, our double hung and single hung, and our slider, awning windows are awesome in wet conditions. You get a lot of rain, Louisiana, Seattle. These awning windows are great because you can open them with the weather and not have to have the rain coming in. Okay? The disadvantage is they don't give you much ventilation. Okay? So it's going to be a trade-off when you get into awnings. Okay. Typically, you'll find these in kitchen applications, that kind of stuff. Bathrooms, you know. So a jealousy window, is that the next one? No, hopper window. A hopper window is this. So this is really good in the summertime, okay, when it's windy out, because the wind will hit the house. It'll fall down on the house. It'll get scooped up by the window and funnel it into your house, okay? Unfortunately, so does the rain. So not really sure. I don't usually specify hopper windows, mostly because they're used in basement applications, okay? So by code, we have to have a means of egress out of every space that's livable, okay? I.e. a basement, a bedroom, or so on. So you have to have a window with a certain amount of square feet to get through the window so that you can get people in and out in the case of a fire, okay? In a basement, you can see how that could be a little bit difficult, okay? So they came up with the casement window, you know? You just basically, you get where I'm from in Nebraska, we have these window wells, which is basically just metal C's that they put down. They fill the dirt up to it, and then down below you have this window, in which case you'd open it up and the wind would come in and blah, blah, blah. So do the bugs. So it's kind of a catch-22. But that's a hopper window, if you will. So it's just like a hopper. Okay? You can see here it's working. It's really difficult to get to the latch when they're up that high. So you want to take that into consideration when you're dealing with these windows. And then jealousy windows are your typical Florida window, okay, or screen porch or whatever you want to call it. It's a series of pieces of glass that are stuck in a track that are supported on a pivot on either end. Okay, now jealousy windows are really, they give you 100% ventilation as well, because you can turn them all vertical. I guess one who's anal could say, well, the thickness of the glass actually reduces it to 92.8% or whatever it is. But the gist of it is you can get them full and get full ventilation out of it. So you can see how you can use jealousy windows in different window configurations. Okay, so here's one with some kind of sliding door system that probably opens up to create a like an open pathway between the two spaces. This looks like it's a hinge. You can see the 3 hinges, so it's probably some kind of door system. Okay, so you can do lots of different things with them. Very 1970s, but again, they have a unique application. The disadvantage is you get this ghost look of the various panes of glass to them. Okay, so any questions on those three? Yeah.
Do they make a good seal when you close back together?
Not really. No. Really, they're screen porch type windows. I mean, in Florida, you can get away with, because the temperature is pretty even keeled. Texas is another one where it's hot, but not a lot of rain falls. They're great for rain. I mean, but you get wind-driven rain. It gets up underneath there and things like that. So I try not to use them as main windows. I mean, keep in mind, if you're thinking from a security standpoint, that multiple slats of glass is no different than a pane of glass. It's going to break. So somebody can just break it, to get in. So it's not a security thing more so as it is keeping your hot air in or out and your cold air in or out is really the issue with these types. Okay. Some other types of windows. Okay, these are clear story windows. All right. They run across the top of a space. Clear story. Not these, but these. Okay. Clear story. Okay. My new office will have clear story windows because they're sticking me in a warehouse and they didn't want me to look outside at the ugly concrete plant. So they thought natural light was important, but Not that important. So that's clear story. These are transom windows. Okay, so they sit above doors or windows. Okay, you want to make sure you cover those. Transoms. Now transoms can be operable or not operable. Okay, so you can make them open or not. In the old days, we used transom windows to bring the ventilation in or out of the space because you'd have the door closed and it's a security thing. It gives you the, prevents a barrier, but yeah, you could pop open the clear story and it would pop open enough that, unless you had a ladder, you couldn't climb the door and get into the space. So it allowed for ventilation at night on low single story, or ground floor spaces by leaning those things in or out, but yet allowing you to keep your regular window closed. So these are casement windows for those who don't know what they look like. You can see how they can give you the full open effect. This is a assembly. Okay. Now how many lights is this one? 6 light sash, and I'm a firm believer in the number of lights is the number of lights. So in my world, this is a 12 light window. What about this one?
16.
Very good. And my arch friend?
12.
Yep. So you got the gist of it. We did Audi windows, right? Excuse me. We did clear story, types of window, we did jealousy. You know about fixed windows. These are bay windows. Everybody knows what they look like. Bay, they're window assemblies. Usually the picture window in the center is non-operable and the 2 outsides are. Doesn't necessarily mean that. These are operable. Okay? But you can get the gist of it. This is becoming very popular again. This whole arts and craft style with the window seat. But that's what bay windows can give you, is the window seat. Okay? So let's see, we'll look at these different types of windows so you can see what they are. We'll get to those in a minute. What am I missing here? Oh, skylights. Oh, Lord. You like skylights?
No.
Yes, no? Why do we use skylights?
To let light in if you can't have any windows somewhere.
Correct. So my question is why do they put skylights in like living rooms? I got windows in my living room. Most houses do.
People think it looks cool.
People think it looks cool. What's the problem with the skylight? Because I'm anti-skylight.
They leave.
They leak, right? And they're not easy because they're normally 12 feet in the air and they leak. That means you got to find a ladder. You got to get up there and you got to figure out why it's leaking. Because anytime you put a hole in a roof, it's not a question of if it will leak, it's a question of when it's going to leak. Okay?
My first house had a closed-up skylight, and I didn't know there was a closed-up skylight until I came home one day when it was raining on a day like this, and I had water inside the fixture, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, and it was a closed-up skylight.
Don't turn the light on. Okay? Don't turn the light on.
It was really bad.
This is your standard skylight. It's a little plastic thing. They usually make it in some kind of tint because, quite honestly, if you've ever ridden in a car with a sunroof or a T-top or a convertible, it'll bake your head in one drive. Okay? Well, guess what? A skylight is no different. So they thought they'd tint them. All right? Whatever. I avoid skylights. I talk people out of skylights on a daily basis. Now, one skylight that I will use is the solar tube in a closet, okay? Because a lot of times closets are interior spaces, and a lot of times you're picking your clothes out in the closet, right? And most of the time we have daylight when we're picking our clothes, right? Because we're going to be out working in the workforce and all that. And you really want those colors to work, right? You don't want them to be tinted by an incandescent, God forbid a fluorescent, all right, or now an LED. I kid you not. We painted one of those offices I was telling you about, right? We used Repose Gray because that's my color. The whole place. And we had 2 interior offices, okay? And we walked in and we went through the first one and it had regular lights in it, regular fluorescence, and it was gray. We walked into the second one and we're looking at it, and it's purple, violet, and we're looking at it, and now between Nat and I, we have probably 70 years of experience, and we're dumbfounded. We're like, what the heck is going on? And we're looking at it, and we're trying to peel the paint without peeling the paint so we could take it out and look at it under another light. Eventually, we got a little piece of it, and we walked out under a regular light, and it was like gray. We're like, score, it's gray. We went back in the room, and it was purple again. And we both went like this at the same time. Now, Nat's like 6'3", 6'4". I'm a midget. I look up, and he looks up at the same time, and he's like, they're using the wrong lights in here. And sure enough, that's what it was. Well, if it'll do that to paint, can you imagine what it does to your clothes? Blue jeans t-shirt works every time, guys. Unfortunately, they don't let you. All right, so you've got this little bubble light. Oh, the solar tube. So everybody knows what a solar tube is now, right? Okay, it's just a hole that allows light to pop into an interior space. It's a very good lead tool or a green tool because it's a lot about natural light, which is always weird because they tinted these skylights and now it's not really a natural light anymore. It's because it's tinted. Flat light skylights like this, these are usually glass, which always amazed me because where I'm from, hail is a prevalent thing. And we had these glass skylights. And I know that hail is not that big of a deal. And I know the glass is tempered, and I know it's rated for a certain amount of pressure per square inch. I got all that, but the thought of hail falling on glass just scares me. But you can see how it looks when it's done right on the inside. It can be very impressive, okay, versus a very, all right? I mean, come on. But then again, look at the chairs.
Yeah.
All right? Very bad chairs in a very bad space. And it's a major player in the skylight industry. So it happens. You can make them operable too, okay? Which is even worse. I know.
It looks cool. But
it looks cool, but the problem is that now you've added a third component to the process, the seal. All right. Originally, you have the plastic or glass, and then you have what we call the flashing around it. That's the metal stuff that curves around to allow the water to not build up and come in your space. Because when you have a piece of wood, because that's what they do for the skylight, and they put a piece of gypsum wallboard on it, and there's the gypsum wallboard for the rest of the ceiling, okay? Over here, your skylight is going to be, you're going to have the roofing plywood, and then you're going to have some kind of underlayment, and then there's going to be some kind of built-up system, either on the roofing plywood or on the underlayment. But right there is where the water is going to come in, okay? So what they do is they say, ha ha ha, we're going to take and we're going to put a piece of metal, however far back they determine, and we're going to make it come up, over, and down, okay? So in theory, the metal keeps the water from coming in, right? It's a continuous strip. By the way, anybody who puts flashing in and not a continuous strip, that's a problem because everywhere there's a joint, it's going to leak, okay? So they'll run this drywall all the way up, and then your skylight will have its nail here, and it'll come up and over. Does that make sense to everybody? And then they'll put their shingles over it. Drive around, you'll see all these roof penetrations, and you'll see these little silver-looking things, and these little black or brown or green now. Whatever. Rubber boots on them for the plumbing stacks and all that. That's the vents to get your stuff out, right? You know that, right? Those little white things that stick up. They try and paint them black, and they fade after 2 years, and then they look really, really bad. Just leave them white, and not hurting anything. That's the vent to get the gravity into your pipe to flush out all of your water that goes down the drains. All right, but they have to be flashed. Same thing with skylights. Okay, any questions on that?
So the solar tube doesn't leak?
Not necessarily. You can see how it's got a little cap on it and stuff. See this right here? This is the flashing. It's an integral part of the tube. Okay, I know they leak. I've seen them leak, but the component